Hi there. Welcome to New Tracks Modeling. New Tracks is an exciting new digital opportunity to obtain mentoring to help you improve your modeling. You will meet talented modelers and manufacturers from all over the world who share their model building skills and artistic advice. Improve your modeling and increase the confidence in your modeling efforts. Share your building efforts with fellow modelers and have some fun doing it. The shows are live on Zoom and YouTube, so be sure to join in and ask your questions. Now here is New Tracks founder and your host, Jim Kello, NMRA.
Good evening. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really do appreciate it. We've got a great show for you. It's kind of a long show, so I'm going to keep the introductions kind of short. Let me start by introducing Father Ron Walton for the show's prayer. Father Walton.
Pat, I'm pulling up blank. Can you play that, please?
Almighty God, just as our models imitate the beauty of your creation, may we imitate your kindness and generosity to us in our relationship with others. Bless us now and always. Amen.
Father, thank you so very much for everything that you do for our show. We really do appreciate it. Now I'd like to show the video for our show sponsor, Brennan's Model Railroading.
For over 25 years, Brennan's Model Railroading has been offering unique products for the O-scale market. Our flagship product, Brennan's Better Ballast, was an instant hit and continues to be the industry leader. Its prototypical size and natural color blend of real crushed granite make it the choice for discerning modelers. Since then, we've developed a complementary line of natural ground cover materials. Additionally, we offer craftsman kits that anyone can build with complete photographically illustrated instructions that assume you've never done this before. The Sonky Wanky Coffee Company is the latest and the fourth kit to be added to our ongoing and highly popular limited edition Ellison Tribute series. These kits take Ellison's scratch-built iconic structures to a new level with Dennis spin. The idea being that if Frank were alive today, this is how we would build these models using modern methods and materials. Use the QR code to visit our website.
I really do appreciate for Dennis wanting to sponsor our show. I think that's awfully nice of him. And I hope many of you go to his website and check out his models. Well, now let's go to Bob Davidson for some comments about our scholarship program. Mr. Davidson, welcome. You're muted. Bob, you're muted.
Oh, sorry about that.
There you go.
Well, as we've said the last couple of weeks, we are very, very excited. We are now actively asking folks to apply for the scholarship, and please, that's one way you can all help us out. Next time you're at a division meeting or a club meeting, please poll the folks who are there, ask them if they have kids or grandkids who might be a senior in high school or going to college right now, and mention the scholarship to them. As we said, the end of the year and last week briefly, our fundraising drive was incredibly successful for this year. And we will be offering 3 $2,000 scholarships. So now we need to make sure we get the word out and get as many kids as we can to apply. We've invited those people who applied last year. We've gone to as many of the college railroading clubs that we can find, and we're going to be actively soliciting divisions and regions. So please, if you can, help us out. And obviously now we're fundraising for next year's program. So go to the site. If you're so inclined, please click on it and visit Zeffy and make a donation. So we would really appreciate it. The program is a huge success because of all the work that all of us have been putting into it. So especially our donors and the kids who go through the effort of applying. So let's keep it going, folks. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you, Bob, for so much that you do and for chairing this organization's scholarship effort. I really do appreciate all the time you put in. Now let me turn to Martin Breckbiel, who is the editor of our new newsletter. Martin, welcome.
Okay. There I am. Okay, yeah. Working away on the next issue of our newsletter. Just put together a little note about art and model railroading. One of your favorite topics, Jim. So I'm going to tie that together in a neat little package, put a little bow on it, and it'll make a page in our little newsletter for people to think about, with a few links to some very interesting web pages and a broadcast show on miniatures that I think was well worth the time spent watching. So that's all I have tonight, except to remind those who are normal contributors, are, you know, the regulars, as it were, whatever it is I've asked you for in the past, it's at time again. I need your February contributions. Send them in to me as soon as you can. Thank you much.
And you know, Martin, somebody asked me, what kind of stuff do we want for the newsletter? And, you know, to me, it's just about anything anybody would like to contribute. We're looking for ideas. We're looking for what you want to talk about, really.
Yeah.
And the kind of information that you think is worth sharing. If you're having a train show, let us know about it.
Yes, I just got a train show flyer sent to me today, which I've already added into the February issue.
If you're a manufacturer and you're coming out with a new product, let us know about it. You know, you don't have months to wait on this, because we put this out once a month. So all you got to do is send it to Martin, send him what you're doing, and so forth. We can get it in the next newsletter. So it's just about anything that anybody wants to talk about that they'd like to share with the group. And, you know, if you're not sure whether it's of interest or not, send it anyway.
Well,
you know what? We'll find out.
Try to make it at least related to model railroading in some condition.
Yeah. But, you know, as far as what we want, just about anything that you think would contribute to the discussions of the group about modeling and mentoring and model railroading. That's what we're all about. So I hope that explains what the kind of thing that Martin is looking for from everybody. Martin, thank you so very much. One other quick comment. I want to remind everybody that we started a new Facebook group called New Tracks Modeling. Anybody that watches the show, reads the articles, hears about us, whatever, you're free to join. It doesn't cost you anything. And what this is for primarily is a continuation of our show. If you see something on the show and you'd like to continue talking about it, join the group and continue to talk about it. If you've got a comment of things you'd like to see on the show in the future, put it on the group and let's discuss it. That's what this is for. It's for your benefit, and it's a way for you to continue a discussion that was started by one of the show segments. So we hope that you'll join. We hope that you'll participate. So far, I think we've got about 100 people who have joined it. And we'd like to see everybody that watches the videos and hears about us to be members, because we think it's a way for us to learn more about exactly what you'd like for us to show you on our shows. And also what your interests are about what we are showing. So that's what it's for, and hope you'll join. Next, I want to introduce Chris Course, who is the host for the My Bills. The one coming up for January is next week. So Chris, I will turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. Not sure about this internet signal tonight, because we had some storms yesterday and things are acting funny. So All right, the next My Build is featuring you. It's a free-for-all, January 17th. Please get your photos to me by the 14th if you can. That way it'll give me a few days to get them all compiled into a slideshow. And if you have not participated in the past, please include a photo of yourself for your intro slide. So this month again is a free for all. Send us what you've got. Send us something you've been working on, etc. And if I can get it to flip to the next slide. Oop, wrong one. Ah, there we go. The February challenge for the My Build is oddities. Show us your oddities: aliens, UFO dealerships, steampunk, jackalopes, non-prototypical trains, depressed center flat cars with weird stuff on them. Those sorts of things. I went on the internet and I found this stuff out there. So I know there's plenty of people that like to sneak weird things onto their layouts and just to see if people react to it. So anyway, send us your photos on that. We can take those at any time, and I will turn it back over to you, Jim.
Thank you so much for doing this, Chris. And we're trying to expand this to where eventually we can get a whole show for this. We have a few other segments for the show this coming Wednesday, or next Wednesday. And most of the show we're holding open for the My Build. So if you have something you'd like to share with us, send it to Chris. Now I want to introduce Phil Edholm, who has an announcement for the Pacific Coast region's upcoming convention called Techline. And it's the 25th, the 27th of April. So Phil, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thanks, Jim. I want to thank Jim for giving me an opportunity to talk a little about this. So I'm not going to talk about actually the convention, but we've actually announced a virtual version of the convention. So I want to let everybody be aware, because I think it could be a very interesting thing to do. Because one of the things I've noticed is there seems to be a real aversion to trying to continue the concept of virtual conventions now that we were able to get back together physically. So what we're doing is we're gonna do actually a virtual convention. Let me talk a little bit about kind of what that's going to be. So I did a presentation a while back. It's actually one of the videos that's up on YouTube about the tech line. This is the Pacific Coast region. That's basically Northern California, Northern Nevada, and Hawaii. Having Hawaii is great. We keep trying to decide if we should have a board meeting in Hawaii, but can't quite come to the conclusion it's a good idea. So the convention is actually the 24th to the 28th. So it starts on a Wednesday evening and lasts till Sunday morning. But the real convention is the 25th to the 27th. So what we're going to do is on the 25th to the 27th of April, we're actually going to have a virtual convention. So we're taking one of the clinic rooms and we're going to pick some really good clinics to put in that room. And they will then be broadcast. The clinic times are basically 8:30 to 12:15, 6:30 to 9:40 in the evening, Thursday through Friday. We'll record the clinics, so those are on the East Coast can see them later if you'd like. And then Saturday it'll be 8:30 to 2:30 Pacific time. What we're also going to do then is have things like the contest room. We're going to have a time where the contest room will be visited by a couple of our local MMRs. One, Frank Markovich, who you've met here, but another new MMR. He just finished his MMR about a year and a half ago. And he's also one of our contest chairs. They're going to talk a little bit about the models in the contest room and kind of walk through. The other thing we're doing is we have 2 prototype tours, and we're going to try something different, which is actually do a live kind of simulcast broadcast during those prototype tours. One of them will be the Carter Brothers Restoration Shops in Ardenwood. They're the guys that are finding Carter Brothers cars. Carter Brothers built narrow gauge cars back in the 1880s, 1890s, into the early 1900s. And they've restored a number of those cars, and they walk through what they're doing and how they do it. The other is Niles Canyon. This is one of our local, call it a tourist railroad. Did a shop tour there. It's really very interesting. Most interesting to me, they have a Klaus Maffei, the only one of the Klaus Maffei double diesel German diesel hydraulic engines. A very interesting kind of subtext in American locomotive history. And the folks that are doing this, actually, there'll be some vendor presentations during the breaks. By the way, if you're a vendor, I'll put my email in the chat. Contact me. What we're going to do is have 20-minute breaks between the clinics. Thought in the virtual environment, actually have the ability for someone to come in during that time and do a 20-minute presentation on Zoom. We'll also put those on in the clinic rooms so that we'll be able to see them hopefully in all the clinic rooms. And finally, some birds of a feather sessions and breakouts. One of the things I'm really hoping we can do is get enough people interested to come to a virtual convention that it really can get that kind of energy we got back in 2021 at the national convention. That had about 600 people that came to it. But I think we get to about 100, we can get some really interesting, momentum and saying, I'd like to do a bird of a feather session on, dead rail locomotives and get 10 people to show up and have a great conversation. The folks that are doing this are John and Sydney Abiticola. They were actually part of the team and really the drivers on doing the stuff in room. Many of you who were at the 2021 convention will remember Sydney. They've actually been doing the SIG meets out here. There's actually a SIG meet coming up in about 3 weeks. And those have actually been done virtually for the past 2-3 years. So there's been a lot of experience on how do you do virtual events and how do you manage them effectively. The reason I asked Jim to come do this today is very simple. If you're interested in doing this, it's $30 after January 15th. But if you go to the link that's actually, and I'll put this up in the chat for everyone on the meeting, or the QR code for those of you who are not in the meeting and see the video, the QR code will just take you to the page about the virtual convention, and it's a $20 registration between now and the 15th. So I think it's a great value. We're really trying to prove forward that this makes sense. And then I'll put in my final, kind of sales pitch. If you want to get out of the cold and come out to the warm, come out to Silicon Valley in April. It's a great place. April 24th to 28th. Got a great room rate. And quite frankly, there are some layouts that you'll be able to see that'll be kind of the level of, I never went and saw John Allen's layout when I had a chance. So I think I talked about those before. So with that, I'll throw it back to you, Jim, and thanks for the opportunity.
Well, I'm interested in this because I attended your tech convention back in 21, and it was a lot of fun. I met a lot of people, believe it or not. It was amazing to me how many people I could meet, even though it was virtual. And I wasn't there. They really weren't there either. But somehow you could meet people, and I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. And for $20, that's not bad. And
it's kind of a no-brainer.
As far as what Phil is saying, I think the group that's putting this on, if they can get this going, there's no reason why this couldn't be done anywhere in the country for any region, for any division. Right. This is something that could really take off, I believe, and be really valued to people that are frankly tired of having to travel, tired of having, hate to say this, Phil, spend money for hotels and food and so forth away from home.
Right.
And if they can get the benefit, if they can get the educational benefit and the camaraderie benefit electronically, then that's a no-brainer to me. That would be great, because that's exactly the kind of thing that a lot of us older modelers are looking for. So I encourage you to give it a try. And Phil, wish you the best of luck with your upcoming tech line.
Cool. Thank you very much. Have a good one, Jim.
Well, now we're running. I'm sorry.
Could I get in a question?
Yes, sir.
You were showing 15 clinics up there. Are you selecting 15 clinics that you're going to put up, and not all clinics will be available?
No. So there are 3 clinic rooms. We had a long conversation. We're going to focus on taking one clinic room and making it virtual, not trying to record all the clinics, because you have to replicate too much equipment and too many people. So what we're going to do is, and actually what probably is going to happen, quite frankly, we haven't talked a lot about this, is as we get closer to the convention, we'll probably do a survey of the people that have registered for the virtual convention and have them rank their interest in the clinics. Or you go do an online form and you can pick which clinics you want, which clinics are your favorite clinics to go see. And what that'll let actually the people that, you know, are part of the online community can hopefully have a word, some selection in what clinics go into that clinic room. So those 15 clinics will then be broadcast live. And what we're trying to do for those clinics and also set up the idea of having the clinician go after the clinic to a separate location and be able to do a little bit of after clinic talk as well if there's interest. As you
Okay.
know, we did that and we did in breakout rooms. We did it before. So, you know, if you have someone that you're really interested in that topic and really want to talk to them more than going to the next clinic or something else that's going on, you can go somewhere and just talk with the clinician for a while. Because there are some things you can do on an online convention. For those of you who are at 21, you kind of saw what we tried to do is we tried to not say, how do you do what you do in a convention? We've just said, can you do things differently because you can take advantage of being online? And one of the things you can do is you can, in a convention, you can't have little separate rooms for the clinician to go to and host a little round table with anybody that's interested. But in Zoom, you can do that because you can do a breakout room. So we'll have the main room where there'll be a clinic, but then there may be a breakout room where the previous clinician will be there and you can jump into the breakout room and go talk to them.
Yeah, I thought that was a great concept in 21.
Yep. And we're trying, by the way, just to be clear, we're trying to figure out really what works here and what doesn't work when you do it in association with a fairly large convention. So, but you know, regardless, if you got enough folks there, it's fun. Like Jim said, it's fun just because it's a great opportunity to get together with new people and meet new people and learn new things.
Yep.
So, but I look forward to seeing you all there.
Any other questions for Phil? Phil, thanks so much for telling us about it, and look forward to hearing more about it later. Well, now I want to start the show tonight really with the first segment on HO scale modeling. You know that we've broken it down. We're focused on one scale for a segment for the different shows each month. And tonight we have two segments that we're doing, HO and O scale. The first one is HO scale modeling, and we have a sponsor for that, Mainline Hobby Supply.
Mainline Hobby Supply is your one-stop store for model trains in G, O, S, HO, N and Z scales, including locomotives, rolling stock, track, train sets, and more to help build your model railroad. We are the largest model railroad shop in the area, and we carry a wide range of model railroad supplies across scales. Our friendly staff is always available to help with your modeling needs and to special order anything you may require. Mainline Hobby Supply is in southern Pennsylvania, halfway between Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. We are only an hour away from Baltimore, and we are easy to get to from the 70, 81, 83, and 270 freeways. Plan to stop by on your next trip through Pennsylvania. Mainline Hobby Supply also has an online store that can cater to your modeling needs wherever you are located. With our large inventory, fixed shipping costs, friendly and knowledgeable service and prompt shipping, consider Mainline Hobby Supply for your next online order. Use the QR code to access our online store.
And we have a host for this segment of HO scale modeling, Ed O'Rourke. Ed, welcome. You're muted, Ed.
That should do it.
There you
Okay.
go.
And so we're going to resume where we left off last month. We're talking about using different models that are available at train shows, at and white elephant tables and things like that. Not for what they are, but for what you can do with them. So let me share my screen. And here we are. And let's see, where's the, I think, is that right? Yeah, okay. we got as far as the New Haven station. Now, the real New Haven station is a Beaux-Arts structure built in the early 1900s. And I had to have this in my station area. The station is obviously a big part of that. But there were no kits that I know of available for it, and it was I didn't have a good sense of really enough of a plan of it to try and scratch build it someday maybe. So I settled on the Bachman department store, combining two of the kits together, which you can kind of see here. This is there's a 3-section part and a 4-section part of this. The side that you see here is the 4-section part, and then the 3-section part. So it was meant to sit on a corner as the department store. On my first layout, it was a flat against the wall. When I moved and built my second layout, I needed it to be in a corner, as you can see here. But it's still a flat. My layout was kind of an island. So I backed it up with some plywood and attached it to the outside of the layout, to the front edge of the layout, which you can kind of see here and over here. If you look behind it, you can see the wall back there. And it functioned pretty well for that. I used some interior photos that I found online to back up the window, so it looks like there's something inside of it. And Jim had asked about what I was planning to do with it for the new layout, so I included a picture here. This is on my layout that I am building right now. I split the one of the 3-section walls that I had, or 4-section walls that I had, and added it to each side a little bit there. So it's going to be like a low relief structure on this layout. Now, of course, if you use this part of the structure, then you're left with the other 4 parts of it, which are the backside of the Bachman kit. So I use them as flats also. You can see here, this one and this one are the same. I kind of buried the bottom of this one in some scenery. And this one and this one are the same, except I cut the bottom off of it here with the dock area. I'll also point out the add a unit expandable factory here that's attached to it on the side. That's another thing we may talk about. We'll talk about a little bit further on. And some cutouts and decals added for signage onto it. The fire escape came as part of the kit originally, so which is very nicely done. So I was glad to have that. Moving right along, and Jim, you'll tell me when my time is up here.
Okay.
Feel free to let me know when my time's up here.
All right.
Design preservation models. They have a great variety of structure things. These are their modular units. You can buy these. This is one section that you get here that you can see. This is a dock level window. They make them with arched windows. They make them with flat windows and with somewhere in between. And you can buy these in sets of 4 in all sorts of different configurations that you put together. The pilasters are separate. You can buy the dock this way. The cornices are separate. There are a couple of different styles of those. It comes with windows and doors that you can add to it. These are the arched windows instead of the round top windows, which are a little more modern. And again, these are used as a flat against the backdrop. This one is a flat against the front of the building. As you can see, the catenary pole here right next to the side, right next to the side of the layout. This is the front side of the layout. The back of it is just a sheet of plywood. This part, the main reason for this structure to be here is to keep elbows away from this catenary pole here and taking it out, because there's a lot of work goes into putting them there. Let's go a little further. Here's another example. This one on the left here is hiding a corner. You can see where the wall comes here and comes behind it here. It hides where the layout, the track actually ends at a corner there. This is again the round roof sections. The more modern addition over here is the City Classic Smallman Street warehouse. And the tank on the roof is a Plasticville USA water tank that I just used the top of it. And the street for this layout, for this building, is imagined. It's out here in space. Don't be afraid to do that. If you don't want to model the street in front of you, don't have room in front of it, go ahead and model it. This is one of their standalone structures. They also make those. I don't remember which one this one is, but this one is Ray's Bar. My father-in-law, Ray Liebensberger, always wanted to own a bar. Thank God he never did, because I'd probably be still running it at this point. But so I made him one and put it on the layout. This is his bar here. You can't see it here, but out back is parked his Cadillac as well. You can apply the sign on the Unita Biscuit sign on the building is actually a paper cutout that I sanded and thinned out so that you can see some of the brick come through when you glue it onto the structure. I've since learned a better technique from Jack Ellis of Bar Mills for printing it on tissue paper, and sometime maybe we'll talk about that a little bit. Continuing on with City Classics, this again is the Smallman Street warehouse. I used this one to make a freight house out of it on the layout. Again, it's a low relief structure. There's an aisle behind there, and it sort of hides, for taking photos or looking at the layout, it hides the fact that there's another section over there behind that scene against the wall. Underneath that is a layout where the track goes from one level to another. City Classics also makes a bunch of 10 and 11-story downtown buildings. I used parts of them on the old layout, but they're too tall for this one. They also make the company houses, which are a great starting point for residential models. The one on the left is John Berardi's tailor shop. John Berardi was my tailor until he retired. This is a design preservation storefront attached onto the front of the house, as they did very often in city structures. The one on the right over here is actually, you can't tell the sign here, but it's my brother Fred's law office. I try and keep, go after some friends and family if I can there. The third one became a tourist home, which we'll visit at another time. I think Walthers has come out with this now. They've sell 2 of them. The City Classics kit was for 3. But I think the one that Walthers has, perhaps they bought the City Classics tooling when the owner Jim Sacco passed away a while back. I'm not sure about that. I think but that may be.
Ed, your time is just about it.
Okay, we'll finish up there then and pick it up next time. All right. Thank you.
Ed, thank you so much. I appreciate it. Look forward to next time. Anybody have any questions for Ed before he gets out of here? Ed, thank you so much. And I think you're right about buying that too.
Yeah, I think they did. And they'll probably come out with some more of his stuff too, which is good because it was good stuff. The stuff that
I agree. In fact, we tried to get it to be one of the build-alongs on our show, but they didn't have enough inventory at that point, so we used another one of their models, and it worked out. It still worked out beautifully for us.
Well, I know one of the guys built that one of those, didn't he? As a build. Yeah,
absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Gary Sherrill did.
Gary, yeah.
Okay, now I want to move on to O-scale modeling. And first I want to show the video for the O-scale Central organization.
Pat, you're going to have to share that. My Zoom is locked up.
I'm David Vaughn of O-Scale Central. O-Scale 2-rail, models built to 1:48 scale and running on 2-rail track, is the best kept secret in model railroading. We're pleased to team with Jim Kello to introduce O-Scale 2-rail to New Track's viewers. O-Scale 2-rail is for modelers. At twice the scale and 8 times the mass of HO, O-Scale's heft and ease of modeling create an outstanding model railroading experience. O-Scale 2-rail modeling is as varied as railroading itself. Modern era, transition or old time, standard gauge or narrow. A wide variety of models is available at affordable prices. There is a supportive community and lots of shows, clubs, and events. You can explore O-Scale 2-rail by going to our website, oscalecentral.com. You will find information about the scale and how to get started, as well as a free, searchable, scale-wide product and service guide and listings of coming O-Scale events. You will also find information about how to join O-Scale Central. We promote O-Scale 2-rail and support modelers in the scale. When your eyes are going bifocular, when you need fresh challenges, keep O-Scale 2-rail in mind. Check us out, oscalecentral.com. Thanks.
And I also asked David if he'd like to make a few comments personally about this organization, since he is the president of the organization. And I don't think he mentioned one thing that I personally get a lot of enjoyment out of, and it's their once-a-month Zoom show. And if you've never been on it before and you're an O-scaler or interested in O-scale 2-rail, I'd encourage you to talk to David and get on their list, because it's a lot of fun and you'll learn a lot. David, welcome.
Thank you. A quick minute. I know you've got a lot of things on the program, Jim. We really appreciate the support that you give to every part of the hobby, but in particular to O-Scale 2-rail. I want to just correct one thing in that video. We keep saying that O-Scale 2-rail is the best kept secret, and we've got both model railroader and railroad model craftsman blowing our cover, because the February issue of Model Railroader has as its cover layout story an O-Scale 2-rail layout by Ed Rapé, and the January issue of Railroad Model Craftsman has John Sethian's layout. They are spectacular layouts, even if you don't usually look at Model Railroader and Railroad Model Craftsman. These are worth a look. So take a look. And I would emphasize that our website, oscalecentral.com, will have links to get you on the online program that we do on a monthly basis. I got a special little treat for Jim Kello. I know that Jim is a traction guy, and O-Scale Central has not had a traction guy in our leadership, and so we haven't done very well at getting traction vendors listed, but we have Ed Shukas will be coming on board as an advisor, and he has assured me that he's going to make traction front and center for 2-rail O-Scale. One more plug, and that is that the Chicago March meet, March 14 through 17 in Lombard, Illinois, is coming up. It's the mother church for O-scale 2 rail. And if you have any curiosity about it, you should take a trip out to Lombard, Illinois. It is, I think, marchmeet.com. Yeah, marchmeet.net. And if you go there, you can learn all about how to get plugged in. But there are exciting things happening in O-scale. One more plug. I forgot this. 3D printing is the best thing that ever happened to O-scale 2 rail, and we think it's going to revolutionize the scale. We've got a small but devoted cadre, and we will now be able to develop products without the kind of expensive upfront tooling, without the expensive minimum runs, and without the expensive carrying inventory. So we have people in O-scale 2 rail that are just incredibly excited about the direction that the scale is going. Thank you, Jim. Appreciate your time. And thanks to David Schultz, who's been showing the flag for O-scale 2 rail on New Tracks for a while.
David, if you'll ask Ed Shuka to get in touch with me, I'd love to get him scheduled be a guest on the show to talk about traction and what he's planning to do for O-scale.
Happy to do that. We'll talk later. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you so much, David, for being here tonight. Well, now I want to turn to David Schultz as the host for O-scale Central's O-scale 2 rail modeling. David, welcome.
Thank you, Jim. It gets a little confusing with all the Davids in the O-scale world.
I send emails to the wrong person all the
time. Well, tonight we're going to talk about the cost of O-scale because one of the things I hear a lot of is that I can't afford to be in O-scale, and that was kind of, I've always been in O-scale. I started off in Lionel, and I had kind of that thing I couldn't afford. I'd look at these brass models, and of course, back in the 80s, we're talking $300. Now we're talking thousands. But anyway, I met a guy in Fargo, North Dakota named Bill Flint, and he was kind of a master at taking bits and pieces of almost anything and turning them into beautiful O-scale models. And I was absolutely blown away by this. And at the time, of course, to me, O-scale was Lionel. Well, I'm looking at the stuff Bill had built, and of course, it's larger, it's longer, it's so I bought my first O-scale model, and Bill kind of took me by the hand and showed me how to scratch build, which I'd never done before. I always had kind of an inkling that I could build better stuff out of my Lionel collection by adding parts or whatever. But Bill showed me, and he was the master of taking a 2x4 and saying, now you just carve away everything that doesn't look like a caboose. And he could do stuff like that, and it was phenomenal. And I always make the comment, Bill was always looking for places and pieces anywhere. And I always said he could go into a beauty salon and come out with 2 items that would work in O-scale for something or other. He showed me pieces out of Bic lighters that can be used for tank cars and for buildings, and so it was amazing. But I have a 11-minute video that I made, and I wanted Bill to trim it down a little bit, but he has so much stuff that he has built, and he's proud of every piece of it. He's won contests, he's won an NMRA contest with this stuff, and so I guess without further ado, I'll let the video do the talking. Like I say, it goes rather fast because Bill's just has so much, and he just couldn't narrow it down, so I just let him go. But anyway, Mr. Rivard, if you have that video available, if you'd start that for me, I'd appreciate it. That is the wrong one. That one's only about a minute long. It's the 11-minute one. That's the one.
Lift off.
David, is this P48?
No, this is regular OW5.
I got it.
But keep in mind, every one of those cars started off as a Mark's car, Lionel, and a sheet of
Unbelievable.
Hi, I'm Bill from North Dakota, one of North Dakota's few O-scalers. I think there may be two, maybe three others, but I've been doing this since 1961, and I started out converting Lionel stuff to two-rail scale. This whole train represents most of the conversions that I've done over the years, and if you'd like to take a look at them, we'll back it up and go by car, we'll run by it. This is a little Sioux-line caboose, which is dimensionally accurate, built from Kusan plastic models and scale trucks. This is a scale gondola I built out of Strathmore in 1965. This is the remnants of two Lionel depressed center flat cars, which I kit bashed. It's kind of a sniglet, no prototype, but this is a Lionel gondola conversion of a EJ&E prototype. This is a Santa Fe Lionel conversion. Santa Fe prototype built out of Lionel barrel cars. Kusan, basically a high rail car, but it just put scale trucks and couplers on it, jack decals. And the ubiquitous Walther's beer can tank car, built without a beer can, but I used PVC pipe instead. The Deep Rock tank is built from Lionel two-dome tank cars, lengthened, and again, shaft decals. Shell tank car, also a Lionel conversion, lengthened and had the dome raised. That's a Lionel conversion. The composite gun is a scratch-built car from 1965. And the Penzi and Erie gondolas are both built from Mark's drop-in gondola kits, which I lengthened and widened with the inside. Two flat cars, one is a light deck, that's made from Kusan plastic flat cars. And the other flat car right by the engine, my first conversion, done in 1961, from two Lionel three-rail flat cars. And to top it all off, the Fairbanks North H1644 is done from a Lionel Trainmaster shell, highly modified for length, width, and put a scale drive in it with Japanese, Canon coreless motor, and ball bearings and flywheels and KDs, and of course champ decals. And that's one of my Lionel. I also think we've coupled to a couple of standing engines, and we're not going to drag the lead sleds around. Here's some more Lionel conversions. This is a Lionel Jeep 7 with a modified cab and short hood and red caboose details on it. But it's all done with junker parts from Lionel, leftover parts from other engines. This is off a Lionel Jeep, scaled down. So the dimensions are all correct. And then I added a few extra features. It has an operating Mars light. And I build most of my engines with removable access for electronics. And it kind of freaks people out when the lights on the engine still work, even when the power's turned off, because of good old reliable AA batteries from the thrift store. Another conversion is a Bachmann, done from a couple of Bachmann ON3 cars. I widened it, lengthened it, put some decent looking trucks on it, and built an underframe. And it's a nice little, it's not perfectly to scale, and it's not any particular prototype, but it's an interesting looking car. It works nice with a little AHM 440, or a Casey Jones 10-wheeler. Another Lionel conversion. This is done from a Lionel General set from 1959. This was a postal car, and it had 6 windows in the door, 6 windows in the door, and 3. I converted it to make it a combine, baggage combine caboose with a cupola off an Atlas 4-wheel bobber. And so that's about the extent of my Lionel conversions. I also convert other things. This is an Ertl truck. It's a model of a truck I drove when I was in college in summer of 1966. This was an Ertl semi-tractor. It's a 1948 Diamond T truck, and I worked for a guy hauling LCL freight to the Great Northern and Northern Pacific freight houses in the summer of 1966. And I scratch built a box for it, but it's kind of an interesting model that of something that I drove as a young man. And nice that the Ertl people did the model. They did a very nice job on it. And so a personal history touch to my railroad. Any questions so far?
Well, what kind of money have you got tied up in this?
Well, the conversions are done out of the scrap box, and used Lionel stuff and used Kusan stuff, and I have a Kusan collection, and the duplicates or the damaged stuff wound up in the scrap box, which I use to source my projects. I have a tub of stuff. This is all leftovers and some projects yet to be built, but the leftovers from all the conversions I've done. But the money involved is not substantial. I mean, it'd be nice to be able to buy all of it in brass, but on a retired person's income, that's and even now as a retired person, the time is not as available as it used to be. But I still find time to do the stuff, and I like to. It gives me a historic perspective on where I was in the hobby at certain times, and where my skill level has developed. And sometimes I go back and find a project I did a long time ago and go, this just isn't going to cut it. So I take it apart and redo it and upgrade it, and so consequently I don't have a finished railroad. I've got a lot of freight cars, a lot of passenger cars, a lot of locomotives, most of which came out of the junk box or modified, cheap Atlas stuff, AHM engines, and I do have some AHM 10-wheelers and the 080 and 440 and an all-nation 10-wheeler. But mostly I build models that are commercially cheap, and sometimes I build models that I'm not even particularly interested in, but if they were so reasonable in price I couldn't pass it up, then I'd snap them up and build them, and then eventually they wind up on the sale table at the O-Scale meet in Chicago in March every year. And occasionally, if it's a model that's not particularly popular, we do a technique which we refer to in North Dakota train circles as Norwegian shoplifting, which consists of taking an undesirable object or something that doesn't sell and it just had been annoying to be in your inventory, and you walk over to someone's table at a meet and you examine something and surreptitiously leave your Norwegian shoplifting item on the table and then quietly walk away. And it's relatively harmless. It does cause a little consternation about people when they go to pack up their stuff after the show going, I don't remember where this came from.
That is my buddy Bill. He is an interesting character. The one thing he taught me, though, is when you start scratch building things, it gets into your blood and it's hard to give up. I still prefer to scratch build things over buying kits, but sometimes kits are the way to go. And when you start finding kits at like the Chicago show, like Bill mentioned, I just bought what do they call those? Like an 85-foot automobile parts car. Quality Craft made it years ago, and the guy had $5 on it. Well, for heaven's sakes, you got to pick that up. But anyway, this show is part one of 2 parts. I've got another segment, about 5 minutes long next month. I'll show of some of Bill's locomotives and other passenger cars and such that he has scratch built over time. But once again, he's got very little money tied up in this stuff, and yet he has won contests. He won an NMRA contest with a Bud RDC car that he built from a Lionel, and it's something to be seen. You know, to take a car that I think scales out at 43 feet in Lionel. He took 2 of them, and I forget how many cuts he's got in this thing, but he glued all the parts back together, and he made a very, very, very interesting RDC3. And so anyway, that's what I've got for tonight. We will continue this next month. But yeah, the Norwegian shoplifting, I got a kick out of that. And he's done that where he's gone around to tables and he'll leave something on somebody's table and walk away. So.
David, that was great. That really was. And it just shows you can be an O-scale modeler without breaking the bank.
You can, you know, and next month, we'll show you some drives that he built using HO models. He'd buy up old train masters, I think it was, and he'll take the trucks and convert them to use them for the drives for the Bud cars. Just amazing how he does some of this stuff. So yeah, he can O-scale on a budget. There's no doubt about it. He always said that he had time, he had money, he didn't.
Yes. Anybody have any questions for David?
Yes, David, it's Pat here.
Yes.
Yeah. On the locomotives, he was running, was it battery powered for just the lights or for the whole thing?
No, it was just for the lights. He's not a DCC guy. Can't, you know, doesn't really want to spend the money on that kind of. So it's standard analog DC on the locomotives, but he likes having the lights on bright to not go and dim as you turn the power down. So he runs all his lights on little battery packs that he buys at oh gosh, that one time he bought power packs from Polaroid film canisters. Huh. And they're little rechargeable gel batteries. And he's got some of those, got to be 20 years old, and they're still working. So yeah, you know, Bill, he does his battery power. He'll, you know, all the flashing beacons, ditch lights, all that stuff is all battery powered. But the locomotive. So, and I got to tell you, these new iPhones, man, if they got a microphone on them, because you'd swear that H16 ran horribly, and it actually isn't that loud, but that phone sure makes it sound loud.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, you're welcome.
That's fantastic. Thanks so much, David. See you next
You're
time.
welcome. Yep.
Now, we were going to have Clem Harris talk about InScale and run the video for the sponsor, National Capital Trains, but we're going to hold that until next week, because next week we've got time for it to really do it justice. And this week we're really pushed on time. So we're going to hold that off. Clem couldn't be here tonight anyway. We have a video that he was going to show, but hopefully he'll be with us next week and we can show the video and have him talk a little bit. So let me turn now to Bob Geldmacher, who you may remember started last week with his first segment on 3D printing. And I got to tell you, Bob, I've gotten an awful lot of favorable comments about the presentation you made. And most of the comments come out to say they've never understood it so well, the way that you presented it, and thank you for making it understandable to all of us. So we're looking forward to part 2 tonight.
Well, thanks, Jim. It's nice to hear that people felt that there was something in it for them. Before I start, I'd like to mention, and some of you might already know it, in a couple of weeks in Springfield, Massachusetts, it's the Big E train show, Amherst train show. And I'm going to be working and doing clinics for Scenic Express there. But there's also a fellow by the name of Martin Welberg. And I don't know whether you all know about Martin or not, but Martin is just an outstanding modeler that lives in the Netherlands. And he has kind of revolutionized a lot of the things that we do in scenery, especially with static grass. Martin is going to be there Saturday and Sunday. So if any of the guys that are on this call, or anybody that's watching at all, gets a chance to attend the Springfield show, and that's the last weekend in January, stop by the Scenic Express booth, say hi to me, but really you want to say hi to Martin because he's the guy. So anyway, we're going to talk more about, and I'm going to share my screen here. Okay. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to do part 2 of my 3D printing presentation, and it's more tonight about things that you can do. And my goal is to whet your appetite. I know there's some of the guys that are already doing 3D printing, but there might be some folks that are right on the edge thinking about it. And I just wanted to give you an idea of some of the things that you can do with 3D printing. And I was really happy to hear David speak a little bit earlier about how 3D printing might be revolutionizing O-scales. I'm an O&30 modeler, so I feel like I'm in that category. I mentioned last week that there's always things that you need that you never have. And the first things that I started doing when I got into 3D printing was I found out that I can make a lot of these little parts, the washers, the spacers, the bushings. The washers in particular have really come in handy because I'm going to talk about rolling stock in a little bit. And I'm always needing washers to move around the heights of my couplers or the heights of my trucks. And you can see here's just some of the things that I've been able to make with my 3D printers. I also had the good fortune of buying about 5 years ago a Jim Burns table saw. It's a model table saw. It's about 12 by 12 inches. And it's just an outstanding piece of equipment. Jim unfortunately passed away recently, and I don't know whether his products are going to be on sale any longer. But I needed some accessories for that table saw. So I built up here a sliding sled, but then I also had to be able to extend my fence so that I could duplicate things and have longer pieces of wood on there. I do a lot of my own creation of my strip wood, basswood. And so I was able to make these things on my 3D printer. I'm sure that most of us have a lot of tools laying around, and I tried to eliminate the clutter. And here's a couple of holders that I was able to make. This one for some of the bits that go in my power drivers, and then also my miniature and micro screwdrivers. We've had Kevin Hunter on the show before. Kevin puts together a line of product, and these are the touch toggles, and these are the bases that control them. But I do a lot of work for Kevin, and after every one of these boards are made, we have to test them. And we decided to sit down and design some testers that allow us to do it. And being able to print the bodies on these really made the job a lot easier. For people that are scratch building, and I do a lot of scratch building, I was having trouble at the beginning to be able to get my joists and my studs all in the right place. So I decided to design some of these spacers for the different size windows that I would put on my buildings. And also, these are magnet holders, so that once I start building and put these spacers in, I can actually position the studs and hold them in place with these magnets. This is a fairly large board that I built to do that. One of the nice things that I discovered that we can make, and I know Tissue does a great job of putting out windows, but with a little bit of practice, you can make your own windows. And there's a process called parametric modeling in 3D printing. And parametric modeling basically says, if I can define all the dimensions of a particular piece by one particular dimension, and let's say for a window, it might be the opening that the window is going to go in, then once you change that opening size, all the other dimensions change accordingly. So you only have to do this one time, but you can make windows and doors any size, any shape. I saw before we had some windows that had some arch tops. Any of this is possible using the 3D printer. I also do a lot of work with static grass, and I know that you can buy these things. I've got a number of commercially available static grass machines, but I decided I was going to try to make these, and I made a number of these for folks. This is just a piece of regular PVC, and I think I got this from a friend that's in the medical profession. But then to make all of the grids that go with it, the cap that goes on it, and then the actual tail end of this thing where the power supply goes, that was all done on 3D printer. So if you have a tool and you want to make it, easy way to do it. My club, which is the Fort County Society of Model Engineers here in Central Maryland, have some specifications as far as how far tracks have to sit back from the fascia and how far in from each end of the module the track has to end. And we were doing this all by hand, and I got to drink some water. Hold on just a minute, guys. Sorry about that. So instead of doing it by ruler every time, we printed up these gauges, and that allows us to position our tracks, again, from the fascia and from the ends very accurately every time. I have a lot of lighting on my layout, and these are just some dwarf signals that I was able to make, and some light globes. But again, all available through 3D printing. And this is what one of these looks like actually on the layout. This throw here does nothing more than covers up a wire that is coming over and coming up from a tortoise. I mount all my tortoises kind of off to the side as compared to in the middle of the rail. And speaking of tortoises, I don't know about you guys, but I found it very difficult to kind of put one of these tortoises up in the bottom underside of my layout and get all the screws lined up. I found that by able to make these larger mounts, and if you have space, it makes it a lot easier to actually mount those tortoises. Also, Rail Crew came out with a under track uncoupler a while back, and that was something else that I thought, well, why not make them? So I basically reverse engineered the Rail Crew device and got a whole bunch of magnets and was able to make these. Now, I made probably around 30 of them. I have yet to install one, but it was a good idea when I got started. Track gauges and wheel pullers. I needed these. Again, I was able to do these on my 3D printers. I always wanted to have a coal mine on my layout, and this is the mine building that I built. But when it came to handling this area here with the sheaves and the gates, I didn't have anything readily available. I found that with a little bit of research, you can pull up the design and actually print these very easily on the 3D printer. And again, I have a couple of these lights hanging off the side of the building, and these are all printed but the 3D. There's a fellow that's been on the show too, and I think it's I know his name is Larry Knapp, and Larry specializes in World War I ON30. And Larry came to me and asked me whether or not we could do some printing for him. So we were able to download a lot of these figures, or Larry did really, from a company called My Mini Factory, and also a couple of these trucks. These are in World War I lorry, and able to print these up for him. Larry has done just an outstanding job of actually painting and weathering these, but you can see what you can do if you have the capability to make it yourself. Speaking of figures, I recently purchased through a company called Model U out of Great Britain some of these figures and downloaded them. And this is a build plate that I have on one of my resin printers. These are all 1/48 scale, and I can get about 30 figures on a plate. And this had just come off of the printer. I think I took that off yesterday. I washed it off a little bit with alcohol. It hasn't dried thoroughly, but I wanted to give you an idea of what that would look like. Now, here are some of the figures that came off of that printer. They still have their supports on them, so these supports have to be taken off. And here's some figures that with the supports entirely off. So if you don't want to spend $5, $6, $10 a piece for your own figures, here's an opportunity to kind of roll your own. Another thing that I've always wanted on my layout was a turntable. And this was my scratch-built turntable. And when I first built it, I was driving it with a 12-inch diameter flywheel underneath the layout, and a stepper motor was butted up against that. The only problem was there was no syncing at all with any of the tracks. So there was no indexing. I had to really nudge it around in order to get it to line up. And every once in a while, it would start to slip. Well, that lasted for a couple of years. And then all of a sudden, I discovered Kevin Hunter again with his touch toggles. And marrying up Kevin's touch toggles, and this is a control panel that controls my turntable, and an Arduino Mega, and this is a special shield that we made in order to take care of connecting all the controls on the control panel, and the stepper driver. Now I can actually index my turntable, and it has a lot of great features, and mainly because of this piece of software which is readily available for nothing called Excel Stepper. So it allows the turntable to start from a position, slowly start, pick up speed so it gets close to the next track, and then slow down again. And then I built in a couple of controls here so I can make it go in either direction, but I can also nudge it. So in case it's off just a little bit, I can nudge it a couple of steps in order to get it lined up. The problem was, how in the world do I make that software work, and what the mechanism? And this is where the 3D printer came in. I replaced that 12-inch flywheel with this gear that is about 200 tooth gear, and that was all 3D printed. The hub that goes into the layout is 3D printed. And then when I first put my stepper motor in there, the table itself acted as a tremendous sounding board, and that's all you heard. So with a little bit of luck and a little bit of work, I was able to insulate that, but all the parts on this are all 3D printed. Again, if you have a problem, this is a solution that 3D printers can help you with. On my printers, I usually have about an 8x8x8 maximum capacity to build. And my first go round with that turntable was I wanted to replace that 12-inch flywheel with a 12-inch gear, which is very, very large. I couldn't do it on one shot. So this is a 4-part, matter of fact, it's about a 6-part 3D printed, very, very large cog that could have worked on the turntable, but it just shows you that you can really build things greater than the capacity of the printer that you have to work with. What really is interesting me most is the ability to make my own rolling stock. A friend came to me and said he had a O-scale car that was longer and narrower than normal, and he could not take the standard ON30 tops off of Bachmann and use them. So he said, can you make something that's longer and narrower? And this was a 2-piece print. I did this on my resin printer. It has some pegs in here in order to match up the 2 pieces, and then a little bit of sanding here and there, a little bit of putty, but it came out pretty good. And again, my thing is rolling stock. So these are just a couple of the cars that we've been able to print using the printer. On these rolling stock, everything except the wheels and the couplers has all been 3D printed. And you can get some pretty fine detail in doing that. I started by using something that I knew. I had a lot of commercially available Bachmann ON30 gear. So I said, why not take it apart and reverse engineer it to see exactly if we could take the measurements and recreate it. These are some of the underbody parts that I was able to print. So you can get some very, very fine detail with these printers. And I think to the extent where if nobody's going to pick that car up and give it really scrutiny. Now, whether or not this could pass a contest, I'm not sure, but it gives you good detail for the car. And here's just some other pictures of the underbody. And these particular ones, on the early times, I actually poured some lead weight in wood molds and then put those lead weights underneath here in order to weigh down these bodies a little bit. And this is when I went into production. So I've made many, many, many pieces of rolling stock now. And this is one of mine, and this is a commercial. And I'm pretty happy with the results. I went one step further because I wanted a track cleaning car, and I just modified one of those underframes, printed a cylinder here, and it's got a cap on it, and then filled it with basically buckshot to give it some weight, and it does a great job of cleaning my track. This is a box car. It started out with a laser cut interior, but the outside is all, again, 3D printed. Some of my more recent things, and I showed this last time, these are some water tenders that are pulled behind an ON30 Climax. And again, I'll give Steve Sherrill all the credit for kind of pushing me in this direction. This one is a squared off corner. This one has rounded corners. All of them now have trucks on there. And again, all these are 3D printed. Something else that Steve and I had worked on, and these are not, these are much shorter gondolas than you would normally see out on the open market. These are only about 3.5 inches long, about 12 feet in scale. But we put them together with various number of boards in here. And there's also a version, which I don't have a picture of, which has braced sides for the gondolas. Again, the only thing that we had to put on here commercially was the, not the trucks, but the wheel sets and also the couplers. The last thing that I'll show you is my club had a curved module, and we weren't sure exactly what we were going to do with it. And I told one of the guys that we would work with it. And this entire trussel or arch trussel is all 3D printed. It came in many, many parts. For instance, the arches were one piece. The vertical pieces here were another. This piece here is a third piece. When the interior is also lined with the same type of material here, but in very, very flexible pieces so we can make that bend. And then the tops are all individual pieces. And then we printed the piers that are here. And then the final product looked like that. We were pretty happy with it. But I've just brought all this up again to whet interest of anybody that's thinking about jumping into the 3D market. One of the nice things is, and I've got a couple of sayings. Number one is that I'll steal a good idea from anybody. And I'll tell you, I've stolen some good ideas from guys on the show already. Number two, there's never a tool or never a job too small not to justify a new tool. And the last one is, if it breaks, I don't care because we can make a new one. And that's what 3D printing has really brought to the table for me. So there's a tremendous opportunity there to make things, to be creative, and to save money. All you have to do is jump in. And with that, I'm going to stop and I'll answer any questions that anybody might have.
Bob, you showed a bunch of figures on your 3D printer.
Yeah.
I assume that you printed those all at once.
Yes. Yeah. Go ahead.
So let's say that it takes you, I don't know how much time it takes, but let's say if you only wanted one figure, it would take you 30 minutes. If you wanted 5 figures on that table, would it take longer than 30 minutes, or can you do more than one in the same period of time if you do them together?
On the resin printers, and that's what that was printed on, that print took about 6 hours. And the reason why it took so long is that I used the highest resolution that I had. And that resolution is like 25 microns or 25 thousandths of a millimeter. So there's many, 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 many layers. And that's the reason why it took so long. To answer your question is, if I did 1 or I did 30, it all takes 6 hours because it's going up layer by layer. But from my standpoint, it's worth it because you get so much more detail.
And you can do 6 at a time, let's say, and it's still going to take you 6 hours.
Right. I think there was like 35 figures on that plate.
Jim, the way to think about that is think about it as a movie, right? Normally you have a movie and the pictures are like this. Just take the movie in your brain and turn it like this. So each frame of the movie is a layer. And it's like that. Each flash is like a flash of a movie. And it just builds up. The filament printers are like toothpaste tubes squeezing out. So one is mechanically dependent. The other is electronically dependent on the speed, how bright that surface is, and how much it can congeal that layer as it builds up. So whether you fill the whole plate or you do one little tiny piece, it's how much time it takes to step up is all that matters. So what Bob's doing is he's being really smart, and then he's using the time wisely by filling the plate up.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Bob, the other thing that crossed my mind, it seems if I was going to be a manufacturer in the hobby, I've almost got to try to position myself in such a way that I'm not a competitor for people who have 3D printers. Because the people that have 3D printers are going to be able to duplicate much cheaper than any model that I can produce and sell to them.
You're probably right. You're probably right.
Can I present a different alternative before we say probably right? If you go talk to the guys who build kits, they will generally tell you that the cost compared to the price of the materials is a small percentage. I mean, a lot of the cost is instruction. So, Bob, that actually is my question. So you've done some really cool projects there. How do you share those? I mean, are you sharing the 3D printed stuff on Thingiverse? You know, do you have a Thingiverse account and a channel? And then look at something like the turntable. I mean, it strikes me that if there's a way to take, 30 pictures, so people who understand a bunch of pictures, not a lot of detail in terms of, writing instructions, and then, sell it as a package to people, including how you do the board. Because, I mean, that's a perennial problem for people, is how do you automate a turntable?
Yeah, let me address that one. Because I work really closely with Kevin Hunter, and Kevin and I are in the conceptual stage right now with this, is that on my turntable, I actually went and set my first track and then manually stepped around through software to the next track and then the next track, recorded how many steps it took, and then was able to hard code that into my program. And that works fine. The only difficult with that is that now that I want to add more tracks, I got to go back and redo the cycle. Not a big problem.
Right.
The idea that Kevin and I have now is that you move the track or move the turntable to a track, and you push a button, and it records where you are.
Right. You make it programmed. You make it programmed on the track and write a sketch that's not a hard coded sketch.
Exactly.
But it is a soft coded sketch.
Exactly.
I guess the perspective then is, see, I think, Jim, this is the really interesting question is, if you become a manufacturer, sorry, got someone with mic on. If you become a manufacturer, basically what you're selling is everything I need to do something. That's what a kit is. Or if I buy a turntable mechanism from ABC company, it's a complete finished thing, and I get all the parts, I put them together, and that's done. What I think 3D printing opens up is this opportunity to eschew the production costs for the intellectual value. In other words, the intellectual value of what you've created, if you look at saying commercially that kit is available for $250, let's say to go out and buy a commercial version from somebody who's built it out of brass, we'll call $250, $300. You've got the intellectual value for somebody with a 3D printer to make that on their 3D printer for how much? $10? How much 3D printing cost is there in all the 3D printed things for the turntable?
Well, I can't give you a good answer because I never am able to get it right the first time.
But now that you know, no. Bob, now that you know what it is, if I asked you to build me, if I asked you to print one for me, Jim, this is really, Jim, let me finish. This is really important because the whole point is, don't think about yourself as being a vendor that sells stuff where you have to sell the physical component with the intellectual value. If you sold that for $100 or $75, all the information on how to do it, all of the components as STL files that I can print, the instructions on how you printed them in terms of detail level. So I can buy that from you. And now with $20 of filament, I get an $85, $95 turntable mechanism that would have cost me $300. This is the thing that this allows, is it allows you to rethink completely the business model. It's a transformation like the internet was in business, where you always had to go to the hardware store. Now you go directly to the manufacturer. This is the intellectual value of the kit is not in the stuff. It's in the how they were designed and how they go together. And you can sell that without selling any of the stuff, because anybody with a good 3D printer that's a filament printer can print it themselves. So think about that business model as being a different business model. I'm sorry, Jim. I thought that was really important to make that point, not for everybody.
I agree, and that's the point I was trying to make, but you made it so well. But I hate to do this, but we've got to move on. And that's the purpose, though, of the group that we started. If anybody would like to continue this discussion, you can do it, but you can do it on the group that we set up. So I encourage, it's called New Tracks Modeling. And I hope that if you want to continue this discussion, because I think it's a valuable discussion, I really do. Up until tonight, I had not really thought about the kit manufacturers having to rethink their business plan based on 3D printing. And based on the new AI, I think that may be even more important for everybody to consider if they're going to stay in business long term. So thanks so much, Bob, for doing what you did tonight. I can't thank you.
I'll add one quick comment. Because I am not particularly interested in going into business and selling a lot of this stuff, I don't have to worry about what Phil said.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. I do it for fun. And I share that with other people that I know that are in the same boat that I am.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so very much. You have a great time at Springfield, and we'll see you after that to find out about how to do scenery.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Now I'd like to turn to Keith Stamper, who is going to talk to us about using vacuum forming for model railroading. So Keith, welcome.
I don't know if he's here, Jim.
Okay, let's assume that he is not with us this evening. I don't know what happened, but
I was talking to him today and he thought he's on next week.
okay. All right, well, I'll make sure he is. Thanks so much for telling me. Probably my screw up. Then let me turn to another person, Bernie Kreitner. And Bernie's going to talk to us about a subject that I think is going to be interesting to every one of us. It's about the economics of model railroading. So Bernie, thanks for being here this evening and thanks for doing this.
I think Bernie may be unavailable at the moment. Why don't we jump to Martin and then come back?
All right, then let me turn to Martin Breckbiel for NMR for his Scratch Builder's Corner.
Strangely enough, I'm actually here.
Hi there, Martin.
Good evening. All that philosophy was beginning to hurt my head. Try not to think at that level unless I have to. And I don't. Okay. We're going to go back to whatever I was doing last week and pick up wherever I left off. And that's where we were. We made strap hinges on the 4 large doors. Now we just have to hang them. And we'll hang them appropriately. Okay, so how do you hang lag door, use a lag pintle with a strap hinge off a barn door. This is what they look like today if you went out and bought one. The ones I'm familiar with did not have the screw-in capacity. They were wedge-shaped with teeth on the sides that grabbed the wood, and you pounded them in with a mallet into a partially drilled hole. It was a good day's work. Pounding those into the oak beams. It's good for the constitution, but we have to make something similar to this in O scale, which in O scale or even smaller is just a piece of wire with a bent into an L. It's very simple because you're not going to see it anyhow once the door's hung on it. And there you go. So what you have to do is make a little hook, a little L-shaped piece. I use 28 thousandths wire. And you got to remember where you got to put the door in the hole, hold it there, mark where this hole is going to go. And you got to remember it's not going to go at the bottom of the hinge. It's got to go a little lower. You've got to give room for that. When you bend the 28 thousandths wire, that radius costs space. So it's actually a little bit low. And that's how you mark where your holes go. I drill them with a drill bit in a battery-powered Dremel. You could drill them by hand. I've gotten really lazy in the last 5 or 6 years, and I just grab the battery-powered Dremel and put the right collet in it and drill as many holes as fast as I can before I get tired of it and get bored with it. Okay, the holes in the brass here I use with a little drill press. But so we mount the panels, drop the door on. That's where the little bit of the challenge is, once you get these in place, they're glued in place, they look easy. Aligning the door and dropping it on there is takes a little hand-eye coordination. Lining up two things at the same time at two different places is a little trickier than it looks sometimes. So there's two of them on, and now you have working hinges. These doors pivot right on those pintles very nicely. And so we can have hinge doors. It's not a terribly difficult thing to do. And unless you turn the building upside down, they don't come off. And there's a second set, magic. Almost too much magic. And we put some door handles on, some more wire, bend it and drill some holes, stick it through the wood. Add some nut, bolt, and washer castings above them. It gives you the semblance of that there's actually a bolt system on here. You can barely see them. The new nut, bolt, and washers from Grantline are in a color of styrene, which is really not that visible until you put paint on top of them. It's unfortunate. I like the old ones that were black. Okay, so I'm going to pre-paint all the doors and windows. I used a particularly noxious color, Coach Green, mainly because I have too many bottles of it, and I happen to like green. It's not the green I particularly like to use, but as I said, too many bottles of Coach Green means it's time to use up some Coach Green. Add the glazing. It's just acetate. Add it to the back. Windows get two pieces, upper and lower, or left and right, depending on the type of window. One piece in the back of the door. It's something I really hate doing because it's tedious work, but now's the time to do it. You've got everything painted, put them on. Doing the glazing later, after the windows and doors are in place, is much harder and not recommended. Okay, so did the roof. This is paper. This is some paper roofing I had from Paper Creek. I still had a pack of it laying around, this rusted corrugated stuff. And it actually looks pretty nice, even in a photograph, I think. Work from the bottom up, cut it all out with I use a scalpel actually to get that irregular edge that they printed it with, and you want to keep that. That makes it more interesting, of course. No real attempt to align anything here other than upwards from the base and wrap around the chimney. Chimney is a resin casting. I have forgotten who I got it from. It was in the box of miscellaneous chimneys. Just painted, I've forgotten what color, red, and two or three other colors touched up on a couple of individual bricks and some black at the top, which is probably not really black. It's probably Brunswick green, because I was trying to kill a bottle of Brunswick green. Let's see. I think we'll look on the other side. So you can see, let's see. There we go. Let's go ahead, move ahead forward. The resin chimney, and I added a little thing called a cricket. I don't know how many people are aware of what that is. It's a little wedge-shaped thing that you put up on the roof to divert rain and snow away from your chimney so it doesn't cause problems later. I remember when I got a roof put on my house, I told them to do this, and the roofers all looked at me like I was absolutely out of my mind. And they're like, "You want a what?" And I explained what it is, and they're like, "Oh, we can do that." They didn't know what it was called, but they didn't speak English either. So it was an interesting meeting of the minds that day. A little bit of tar added. I say tar, it's black paint, and we have a cricket. And the smokestack over the office. It's just, actually there's three different sizes of brass tubing here, stepped up, soldered together. A little piece of 10 thousandths brass soldered to the base. That was filed to a bevel so it would be straight on the roof. Some 10 thousandths brass folded over the top, snipped the corners, soldered all together. Some paint, some really dirtied up Penn Central Green. I have a bottle of Flow Quill Penn Central Green. I find this to be the best use of it, to use it for copper, or it's been out in the weather too much. And we'll have final photos next week after I add the extra course of requested foundation stone all the way around the building. The end. Until next time. Any questions
for Martin? That's going to be a gorgeous structure, Martin, when you're finished with it.
Well, hopefully. We'll see. Yeah, there's an interesting note there from Ed about Paper Creek. They did make some great stuff, and yeah, they went out of business because you could mass produce stuff. Just put it on a copying machine or put it in your scanner and print it.
Yeah.
Print as many copies on as heavy a gauge paper as you may or may not want. So that is unfortunate. And which is also, I freely confess, when I found out I was down to my last sheet, right onto the scanner before I cut it up and use it. I may need a piece later.
Martin, thanks so very much. Look forward to seeing you next week.
Well,
a week after next.
There you go. There you go.
You get a week off because we're trying to get more people to be into my bill.
Right.
So thanks so much for this night. And you might really want to talk to Bob Geldmacher, because I really think this 3D printing deserves some kind of comment in our newsletter, because the point that Phil made, I think is a valid point. And I think all the small manufacturers are going to have to deal with this maybe sooner than later to really change their business plan a little bit, because from what I saw from Bob, pretty much anything I want to build, I can 3D print it now.
Well, I think you'll find that a lot of the small manufacturers are already 3D printing it and selling it on Etsy. I'm finding all kinds of great detail parts and interior parts, and if you're not careful, you can spend 3 or 4 hours on your computer looking at 400 websites of products for sale that are 3D printed. I mean, you should not underestimate how many people are already a couple of years ahead of us in coming to this conclusion. They've already preemptively jumped ahead.
Maybe
we just don't know about it.
Maybe we ought to have something in the newsletter about this then, because if we're that ignorant, we can't be the only people in this hobby that are that ignorant. And I think it's worth people understanding and knowing about. I mean, if you don't have to buy it from in a kit, why not buy it cheap?
I think this ties into what I was saying earlier about miniatures.
Yeah.
That entire area is something that we don't seem to be aware of. And they're very active in producing small parts, details that we're only discovering are available. They're out there in a multitude of scales, printing stuff up. And as I said, they're all on Etsy and selling the stuff at pretty good prices. I mean, you know, pretty cheap stuff. So I don't have a printer, and as long as I can get cheap stuff cheaply, I'm happy with that.
Why not do it? I agree. All right. Thanks so very much.
But Bob can send me whatever he wants, whenever he wants. We'll take it.
Gotcha. Something to think about, Bob, because I really was impressed with the capabilities that you showed tonight, because that really convinces me if I had a 3D printer and I could do the CAD work, I could build anything I wanted to on a 3D printer. And I had not realized that until tonight. Okay, so is Bernie available now? Bernie, did you rejoin us or?
No, I don't think so.
We lost Bernie?
Yeah, I got Bernie Kennybunk, but that's not the one you want.
No, I want Bernie Christen.
Bernie Christ, no. He's not here.
Okay, I don't know what happened to him. I know he was here earlier. I talked to him, and I know he was planning to be here this evening. I don't know what happened. Okay, so let me go to Steve Sherrill. for his What Do You Want to Talk About? What do you want to talk about, Steve? Is Steve not with us either?
I don't know what happened.
I don't think Steve's talking tonight. Sorry.
Everybody's disappearing on us.
This is going to be a shorter program than I had anticipated, guys. But I think it's time to run the caboose, Pat, if we have one of those.
Steve is there.
No, Steve's here.
Oh, okay.
I just got a frog in his throat.
There he goes.
I just got excited, you know.
Well, but no, they told me you weren't here anymore, so I was going to.
No. The
What do you
iPad, the iPad has my wife's name on it.
Oh.
Okay? Like everything else. But
we couldn't find you that way.
For everybody that's on here, look at your name, and if you don't like what's there, click on the 3 dots on the upper right of your picture and change your name. Don't be the guy with his wife's name on his picture. I would be embarrassed to have my wife's name on my picture.
Yeah, she's not there either.
well, I have no comment because she may have this thing, you know. Might be, I don't know. Anyway, what I want to talk about tonight is you never know when you're going to meet a model railroader. And today I had an experience which I had to send my son back to. I didn't have to send him. He was here for 2 weeks. And when that experience ended, he was put on the train, number 30, capital limit, going to Washington, and then he was going back to New York City. And so while I was at the station, the Harper's Ferry, there was a guy there who had a tripod. And every 2 seconds, he would open the door and look down the tracks. And I said, you know, the number 30 is not coming for 22 more minutes or whatever. I said, what are you doing? He said, well, I'm taking pictures of the trains as they come down. And so I said, well, are you a model railroader? He said, yeah. He was an HOer, and I said, introduce myself. And I told him about new tracks. And then we talked for a little bit. And then a father and about a 2-year-old son, the little boy waddled in, went on the platform and sat down. His dad sat down next to him. And the train came, number 30. And the little kid, believe it or not, the attendant for the lower level of the train opened the window door and was talking to the little 2-year-old across the track. And the little kid was just talking like normal. And so the train pulled out, and this dad said, you know, he would sit here all day and watch for these trains. He loves trains that much. And so I talked to his dad a little bit, and he was a model railroader also. So, I mean, there was 3 people, and I'm including the 2-year-old, who were model railroaders that you just happened, you know, to talk to and meet. I probably never would have met those people, never would meet them again. And so you just never know. And I always ask people, after I get into a little conversation, you get a feel of, hey, are you a model railroader? And it doesn't really matter what scale you're talking about. You will always have something in common with another model railroader to talk and share. And I just think that that's a great experience to have. When I had my lawn and landscape business, we had 150 new homes that were built. And everybody that moved in, I asked them, after I addressed the work I was going to do for them, you know, are you a model railroader? And yes, there were some that actually were model railroaders who were downsizing their houses and had model railroads before. And so you just never know when you're going to meet a model railroader, and always be ready, you know, to share your hobby with them. And so that's what I have tonight. So I know some of you have met people
You know, it really makes you feel good when you meet another model railroader, I think. So, you know, if anybody wants to share any of their experiences, I think that would, now's about the time.
Hey, Steve, we all have to start wearing our "We Still Play with Trains" t-shirts.
Well, you know, I have my dead rail hat on, but most people don't even know what that is.
You know,
they look at me as,
I would prefer being known as a ON30 modeler, but I cannot find an ON30 t-shirt. I've looked probably every show that I've been to. Can't find them.
Al Judy has them.
Al Judy.
Yeah, I haven't looked hard enough then.
I've got some that they've shrunk, or I've gotten bigger. I don't know. That might fit you.
Contact Al Judy. He's running a batch right now.
Yeah, but he doesn't have a pocket, man. He won't. You need a
Can't
pocket.
have everything.
You know. Yeah. But
Steve, if you can hear me, your dead rail hat was one of the first things I noticed the first episode that I ever joined New Tracks.
Yeah, well, thank you. I actually sent one to a guy in California. He saw my hat and he said, "You got any more hats?" And I had one that I had never worn in like 6 or 7 years. So I sent it to him. Now I don't have any more hats. So I've got to see about getting some hats made. But yeah, believe it or not, the only person that ever noticed this hat that says dead rail on it was a woman. I don't know. I'm a little concerned about what she asked me about that. But she noticed that no male has ever said anything about it. But I see your face work, huh, Doc?
Say again?
I said, you're off work?
Yeah, actually just got off work about 30 minutes ago.
Are you an N-scaler?
You know it.
Okay. I know you're new. You're new on here. You're also you don't have a layout yet, right?
No, but we are currently moving across the street. My wife, she manages properties and is getting into the Airbnb business. So she took over a property across the street, and it's a giant loft that's probably twice the square footage of where we currently live. So I'm hoping to be able to at least start something a little bit bigger there that might be still transportable.
Yeah.
But right now I'm just building structures. Basically. And even if I do build like a block scene, I build it modular, so it fits together like a puzzle piece.
Are you going to send any of those pictures, any of those photos in for my build?
Well, I actually already have.
Okay, you going to send some more?
Yeah. I've got one that I'm working on now, but because we're in the process of moving currently, I probably won't be free until Monday to even start working again. But after Monday, I plan on kind of at least dedicating 2 or 3 hours a day and getting back into it for the next month or two, because it's slow at work. So the only thing holding me up right now is just, us moving.
Do you have a track plan?
No, not at all. But I did have a lot of ideas in my head, and I've dabbled with one of those programs that you can download for free. And if you want to purchase the entire thing, I think it's something negligible. It's like 30 or 40 bucks. But it tells you everything you need. It tells you, if you want to use code 100 track or this type of track or this brand or anything, it lists all of them in there. And you can set up your layout plan based on, how much space you have to work with and your baseboard. And you basically go from there. And then by the end of it, you can print out basically a parts list of everything you need to buy so that you don't buy a little too much, or it tells you, how you could purchase a little extra, just in case. But that's where I'm going to start with that, just because I don't have any experience doing that.
Well, be careful. Don't get overwhelmed building your first layout.
Oh, no. What I'm going to do for my first layout, it's probably going to be I would say at the most, I would say 2 to 3 feet deep and maybe 10 feet wide, kind of like a shelf layout. And I'm going to model a city scene on top and have a subway train underneath. And then if I can manage to make it happen before we have to move again, I'll do an elevated rail above the street level as well. So I'll actually have 3 levels where a train will run above and below the ground.
Well, that's gonna be interesting to see. I hope we can follow that, your build. Maybe we can get you to do a couple of shows on your build when you get started.
I don't know about that.
Why?
But I'll try.
You can get plenty of help here.
I know. I've got oh gosh, that's just for me, it's time and money. There's just 2 things I'm trying to prioritize right now. It's difficult, but yeah, I think for sure that I'll at least get the scenery portion of it done by this year. And I plan to start track laying toward the 3rd quarter or 4th quarter of the year.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. Sounds real good. Yeah. My end gauge didn't last very long in the early 60s. They weren't very good. End scale was awful.
Doc, are you familiar with any of the modular standards like N-track, T-track, or Fremo?
Yeah, I've seen a lot of those. I watched some videos on how to build them yourself. I went to some manufacturers who sold them, and they just, to me, they seem very, very expensive. Because I just feel like I could potentially build the first part of this that I'm building modularly. Now, once I go to lay track, that might not work so well modularly, but as far as just building the middle layer, let's say the street level, I can do that modular all day on, Pink Panther foam. But when I go to lay the track and the underground track, let's say a year from now, that's where I need to be somewhere permanent. And I won't be doing it modularly at that point.
Well, you might be able to work those modules in though.
Well, I mean, you're right. We'll see what I learn this year.
Well, now where do you live?
Currently, I am downtown Memphis on the 18th floor of a high-rise building, and I'm moving across the street to it's not huge, but it's about 2,500, 3,000 square foot loft. It's just a big open room, basically, with, it's set up to be an Airbnb, and that's what my wife does. So she's in the process of turning that into an Airbnb that'll sleep 6. So that's where we'll be living for the next year. So at the same time, it's still not permanent. At some point, I'm going to have to tear all this down and move.
Well, you could always build a micro layout.
Well, I planned on doing something like that, just for practice purposes. I just don't know. What yet.
Well,
I want to go switching instead of just like a loop layout, because I don't know much about turnouts. And I don't know much about wiring and soldering, and I think that would be a good avenue to go down to learn that aspect of the hobby for when I transition to a bigger layout. So I think I'm probably going to do like a point-to-point switching layout, maybe 4 feet wide, and like a foot or 2 deep, just to learn those aspects of the hobby, because those I know nothing about it. When I read those schematics, I might as well be reading Chinese. I mean, I know nothing about it.
Okay. Well,
maybe that's something we ought to have on the show.
He's our first beginner.
Maybe that's something we ought to have on the show. I'm serious.
Yeah, that's one thing that I had mentioned is, one thing that's so intimidating when you are new coming into the hobby whether you're 10 years old or 40 years old, is, the fundamentals of this hobby are kind of crazy when you think about it. I mean, you've got to know CAD software, you've got to know electrical work, you've got to know carpentry, you've got to know painting. I mean, the list just, as you guys know, goes on and on and on. And it's kind of, it's overwhelming when you first start, because you just think, well, God, I can only spend the first 6 months with the money I've allotted, literally just gathering tools, and then the next 6 months gathering glues and paints. And then the next 6 months, structures. I mean, it's kind of overwhelming when you first start, and nothing, I should say.
What you need to do is find the NMRA division in your area and tap into some of that and see if there are people there that will help you with that. There's plenty of knowledge out there. You don't have to know all that stuff. What you have to know is people who know that stuff and can help you with it. That's the beauty of it. And there are, I would venture to guess, there are plenty of people who'd be happy to do that. There are a lot of guys who built their layout. They're done with that now. Good. I can help you build this. This will be a lot of fun. Yeah. Okay. Look around and think about that. See if there's an active club or an active NMRA division in your area that you can get hooked up with.
You're right. There absolutely is. It's probably about 5 miles from my house.
Well, there you go.
The majority of these guys, they only meet 1 day a week, and they happen to meet when I am, basically I have to be at work. So I've taken off work 3 or 4 times to go see what they do. I mean, a lot of them, they just seem like their main concern when they get there is operations. I completely understand that. And, I'm on a different schedule than a lot of people, but they have all offered to help me, as well as everybody in this hobby that I've met so far. So it's not something that I'm rushing to do. And I know there's plenty of help out there, and I've basically received nothing but love and help since I've started this hobby. So I understand.
Well, good. Good luck. And it's a process. You can do it the whole rest of your life.
You don't have to learn from another N scaler. You can also go to other scales. They all.
Oh yeah, I know. There's not many of us out there. Most everything I learn are from people in HO. Believe it or not.
Well, what I meant by that was all scales. Experienced people. They know how to wire. They know how to solder. Most of them know how to paint. And most of them have made plenty of mistakes, so they can tell you what not to do. So, I mean, there's a lot of resources out there. And an older retired person is probably the kind of person that you want to have as your mentor, because he is available all day. His hours, could coincide with when you're available. And really, older guys really like to share our knowledge. Don't we, Jim?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. Listen, I hate to stop this, but Bernie, are you with us now?
I am, but I don't think you can hear me.
Yeah, you're breaking up.
Yeah.
Why don't I just reschedule you for next week, and we won't worry about you tonight. I would ask you to contact Bob Davidson so that he can mail you the.
I already have.
Oh, okay, fine, great. Thank you so much, Bernie. And sorry it didn't work out
thank
tonight.
you. This was really fascinating, particularly about 3D printing.
We'll talk to you next week. Thank you so much.
Thank you. See you next week.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Steve, to interrupt you, but I knew that he was there. I just didn't know how his phone was going to his computer was working. He's got an internet problem, I guess, from where he is tonight.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. I know Bernie. He's a heck of a nice guy. I've been around a long time. He's also
really. Yes, thank you.
N-scale dealer. So,
yep.
Want any N-scale, he's definitely the man.
Well, and since the caller was talking about in scale, I thought, if Bernie was available tonight, that'd be a perfect connection for him.
Yeah, if you give him my contact information, he wants to get in touch with me, I'll be glad to talk.
That would be great. Steve, do you have Bernie's contact? I can give it.
I don't have Bernie's contact number. No.
I have it. Who was the N-scaler you were talking to? I don't remember his name.
Doc.
I'm sorry.
He's still on here. Doc.
Oh, Bob Lovelace?
Yeah, Lovelace.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Bob, I'll send you Bernie's information. You can contact him directly.
Yeah.
I can do that.
Yeah.
Okay, Steve, are you through tonight, or?
I guess
Okay.
9 o'clock. So.
All right. Well, with that said, let's turn to our caboose for this evening.
Sorry, Phil.
This active railway doubles as a cafe. So how do you know when the train's coming to avoid getting plowed down? The government actually almost shut down the cafes after some lady with a selfie stick made the train slam on its brakes. Now the cafe owners police the area to make sure no one's in the way and also have a schedule of when the train comes. Does the train still blast through the bars at night, as that would be a bit dangerous, given people have been drinking? The answer is yes.
Well, that is our for this evening. I certainly hope you enjoyed it. Most importantly, I hope you learned something. Sorry about some of my file ups tonight, but it happens. I'm just getting, I guess, and have some senior moments from time to time. But I thank you so much for putting up with us and for joining us. And happy modeling. See you next Wednesday.
Right.
Don't forget to enter